Hi, boys and girls. Today we're doing Chapter 1, Lesson 5, Rounding to the Nearest Hundred. This is just like rounding to the tens, except you're rounding to a different place. So there's only a few minor changes. So if you understand how to round to tens, rounding to hundreds will be plenty easy. Okay, so our learning intention is I'm learning to round to the nearest hundred so that I can estimate and decide if my answers in math are reasonable. You will need to be able to do that when you get into harder math. We do it some now in addition and subtraction. You can also do it in multiplication, but it really counts when you're doing harder math or when you're in a job. You have to make sure that your numbers are correct. Okay, so we are doing these 3 pages, pages 35, 36, and 37. So let's get started. You should have watched my 2 instructional videos already so that you understand the steps. I will be referring to those videos. So if you haven't watched them, you may find you're a little lost. You might want to pause this and go back to the other 2 videos. Okay. So it says up here, there can be more than one reasonable rounded number. That's the first time I've heard that one. Anyway, so a hydroplane isn't, well, I guess you could because depending on if you're rounding to the tens, the hundreds, or the thousands. Anyway, okay, example 1. A hydroplane is an extremely fast motorboat. In California, a record speed was set of 213 miles per hour. What is the record speed rounded to the nearest 10 and rounded to the nearest 100? So first we're going to round to the nearest 10. I see what they mean now by to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So we're going to do this their way, and then we're going to do it the way that I showed you. Whichever way works best for you, you can use, because I don't check to see how you did it. It's just when I look at your work on a test or whatever, I want to know that you did it. Okay, so first we're going to use their number line to round to the nearest 10. So they did the numbers 210 and 220 because between those 2 numbers is where 213 falls. So then you think of the nearest 10 less than 213, which is 210, and think of the nearest 10 greater than 213, that's 220. These are your potential answers for rounding to the nearest 10. So I'm going to go ahead and underline those like we did on my videos. Okay, then 213, we look at it, it's much closer to 210 than it is to 220. So we know that rounded to the nearest 10, the hydroplane speed was 210 miles per hour. Now we'll round their way to the nearest 100. Think of the nearest 100 less than 213, which is 200. And think of the nearest 10 greater than 213, which is 300. 213 is closer to 200, so rounded to the nearest 100, the hydroplane speed was 200 miles per hour. Now, 3rd graders often have trouble thinking about the nearest 100. They'll say, well, 100 is less than 213. 500 is more than 213. They'll just pick random hundreds. That's why I developed my system for doing this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll up a bit, and I'm going to put the number the number 213 in a place value chart, like I showed you on the video. Okay, I changed colors so you know that I'm working, doing mine. So I'm doing it in blue, keeping it separate from the red. Okay, so here's the ones place, the tens place, and the hundreds place. I am rounding to the tens, so I'm going to underline the tens. I'm going to draw my open number line with my 3 tick marks, my 2 underlines for my potential answers. So I'm in the tens. I'm actually in the 210s, so I'm going to write 210. And you'll notice that that was on their number line as well. And then the next 10 after 10 is 20. I'm counting by tens. I count 10, 20. This is actually the 220, so I'm going to put my 200 on there. Now I need to find the number that's smack dab in the middle. Exactly in the middle between 10 and 20 is 15, because I know I have to have 5 in the ones place. I'm still in the 200s. So there's my middle number. So now I'm going to think 13 is less than 15. So if I was counting from 10 or 210, counting by ones to 215, I would count like this: 210, 211, 212, 213. So that number would fall in here, which means it is closer to 210. So 213 rounds to 210, which is the exact same answer that I got right here. Okay, now we'll do it again with the hundreds place. So again, 213. I'm going to put it in a place value chart. The ones, the tens, the hundreds, and this time I'm rounding to the hundreds, so I'm going to underline the 2. I'm going to make my open number line with my 3 tick marks. My first possible answer, my second possible answer. I'm in the 200s, and 100 after 200 is 300. If I'm counting by hundreds, I say 100, 200, 300, so that's the next 100. Now I know from the videos that smack dab in the middle is 50, but it's actually 250 because I'm in the 200s. Now I look at 213. If I were counting by ones from 200, I would get to 213 before I get to 250. Another way to think about this is to count by tens. 200, 210, 211, 212, 213. I want to get rid of this so I don't confuse you. I just wanted to point that out. So I was counting by tens. Okay, so I would say 213 before I get to 250. So 213 is in here, which means it is closer to 200. And that's the answer that I got there. Okay, so those are the 2 ways that you can do it. All right. I still prefer my way. Not because it's my way, I just think that it's a little bit easier for people that don't get it. If you get how to round, it doesn't matter how you do it. But if you don't get it, my way is better. Okay, so example number 2. Olivia placed some jelly beans in a jar. She rounded that number to the nearest 100. To win the jar of jelly beans, the estimate needed to be guessed. What was the winning number? So we're going to use a place value chart to round. So the way they do it is they have you circle the place that you are rounding to, and then you look at the next digit. Okay, so you're rounding to the hundreds, so they circled the 4, and then you look at the next digit. So the next digit is 8. 8 is closer to the next 100. 80 is closer to the next 100. So you have to change the 4 to a 5. And then you fill this in with zeros. That's 1,500. The thing I don't like about this, that I prefer about the open number line lets you see that it's actually closer. It's not just a matter of changing digits, because that's what students begin thinking, that it's all about just changing digits. So they just start changing digits randomly. Anyway, that's my personal opinion. So 1,483 rounds to 1,500. So like they told you here, if the digit 8 is less than 5, do not change the circle digit. So when you look at the 8, if it's less than 5, you do not change it. But it is 5 or greater, so you have to add 1 to the circle digit. So that's what we did here. 4 plus 1 is 5. So that's how you got the 5 there. Okay, replace all digits after the circle digit with zeros. So 1,483 rounded to the nearest 100 is 1,500. The winning number was 1,500. Okay, they have the little helpful hint. Rounded numbers have 1 or more round zeros at the end. Okay, so let's look at the guided practice. you're going to round to the nearest hundred each of these numbers. So 622, round it to the nearest hundreds. Show your work on your page, write it on the line. I'm going to do it with the open number line. So if you practice the open number line, you'll be able to see if you did it correctly. Okay, so pause your video, put your answer in there, and then unpause your video. Okay, so I am rounding to the hundreds place. Since I've already drawn my place value chart, I am just going to use their place value chart instead of rewriting it. No point reinventing the wheel. So I am rounding to the hundreds place. I'm going to make my open number line. Okay, so I'm in the 600s, so I'm going to write 600 here. Another 100 would be 700, 600, 700. I know that exactly in the middle I have to have 50 at the end, and I'm in the 600s. So 650 is smack dab in the middle. Okay, so 622, 600, 610, 620, 621, 622, 622 would be right in here. So it is closer to 600. So if you rounded to 600, give yourself a pat on the back. Okay, the next one you're going to round to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. Do an open number line for each one. When you're done, unpause your video. Go ahead and pause. Okay, we're going to round to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So first we're going to do 10. I'll do this in blue, then I'll do the other one in another, maybe red, because there's not a whole lot of red on here. Okay, so here's an open number line for my nearest 10. Okay, and I'm in the 60s. Actually, the 260s, so I'm going to put my 200 on there. The next 10 after 60 is 70, so it's the 270s. I know I need a 5 in the ones place and keep my 260. Now 265, oh look, there's 265, smack dab in the middle, so I know that it automatically goes up to the next number, 270. Okay, switching colors. I'll use green, that'll work. Well, I have a green, are those jelly beans? I think they're jelly beans. It looks sort of like a watermelon. Okay, I'm rounding to the hundreds place, so I'm going to make a hundreds open number line. Okay, and I'm in the 200s. 100 more is 300, 100, 200, 300. In the middle, I know I need to have 50. I'm still in the 200s. I made this little squishy. There we go, circle it. Okay, so 265. 65 is bigger than 50. So 250, 260, 261, 262, 263, 264, 265. So 265 is bigger than 250. So it would go there. It is closer to 300. Okay, let's go on to the independent practice. I have to do one of the problems in here with you so that you know what to do. Okay, up here on page, what page are we on? 37. So these you're going to round to the nearest 100. Now if you're going, oh my gosh, there's a thousands place right there, go back and look at the video at how to do those. You have to keep that 1,000 there. If you don't, your answer will be wrong. Okay, so you're going to round each one of these to the nearest 100. I'm going to highlight it for you so that you remember to read the directions. Okay, now this one says, this is the one that's a little challenging, so I'm going to do it with you. Round to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. Cross out the rounded number that does not belong. Okay, so first of all, let's highlight our directions. We're going to number them to make sure that we do all the steps. So first we're going to round to the nearest 10, step 1. Next step, round to the nearest 100. That's 2. And then the third step is cross out the rounded number that does not belong, just like on Sesame Street. Which of these things just doesn't belong here? Okay, so let's do number 9. We're going to round it twice, once to the tens and once to the hundreds. So I'm going to make, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go over here a little farther so I have some room, like I'm using scratch paper. Okay, because you don't have enough room to write all this stuff, so you'll need to use scratch paper or a whiteboard. Okay, so my first number is 453. I'm going to put it in a place value chart. Ones, oops, tens, hundreds. So first I'm working in the 100, or in the tens, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to make a tens number line. Okay, I'm working in the 50s, the 450s. Yeah, because I'm doing the 10. Sorry, I confused myself there for a second. The next 10 is 60, so 460. Smack dab in the middle is a 5 in the ones place. I'm still in the 50s, the 450s to be exact. Now 453 I think is less than 455, so I'm going to count 450, 451, 452, 453. So it is closer to 450. So you can circle the number that it rounds to help you out. Why is this not letting me write? There we go. Okay, but I'm not going to be counting the circles. I'm going to be counting what you crossed out. Okay, now I'm going to, with a different color, I'm going to do the hundreds place. Okay, so I'm rounding to the hundreds. I'm in the 400s. The next 100 is 500. Smack dab in the middle I know is 50. I'm in the 450s. Okay, and oops, I underlined it. Circle, it's not a potential answer. Okay, now 453. Well, I see 450 here, 451, 452, 453. So 453 would go here. So it's closer to 500. So I'm going to cross out 460. You do not have to circle these numbers here. I'm going to go ahead and erase them just to make it more clear that you do not have to circle them. I'm just looking for the crossed out number. If you want to circle them so you know which ones you rounded to, so you know which one to cross out, you can totally do that. But I'm only going to look at the crossed out one. So each of those is worth a point. The ones at the top, only worth a point. Now this is where a lot of points come in. You had a ton of points on yesterday's math too. So you're going to round every single number to, on these tic-tac-toe boards, you're going to round every single number to the nearest 100. Round each number to the nearest 100. So in every box, you're going to round every single one to the nearest 100. Okay? So that's step 1. The second thing you're going to do is circle the row or column in which 3 rounded numbers are the same. So if you end up with 203 squares together, then that's your tic-tac-toe right there. So you're going to do 2 things. Oops. Thought I had switched to the marker. You're going to do 2 things. You're going to round every single one of these in the blue boxes to the nearest 100. When you see 3 hundreds that are the same, like 100, 100, 100, circle them. It'll either be in a row or a column, not on the diagonal. Okay, and finally, you're going to tell whether each number is rounded to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100. Now, when you round to the tens, you're only going to have a 0 in the ones place. When you round to the hundreds, you're going to have a 0 in the tens and the ones place. So That's your job, is to identify if it's been rounded to the tens place or to the hundreds place. That's really important that you can see that detail, because then when you are asked to round to the tens or the hundreds, that means that your brain is paying close attention to the place value. Okay, that's it. That is rounding to the nearest hundred.